5 boys, bound by blood and darkness, terrorized their city under the name the Bloodline. Their legacy was written in crimes so horrifying that even the darkest corners of the underworld feared them. Armed robbery, rape, and murder were their calling cards, and their names, Raze, Ethan, Marcus, Leo, and Jake, were whispered in hushed tones, a reminder of the devastation they left in their wake. At the helm of this twisted gang was Raze, the most reckless and savage of them all. He thrived on chaos, living for the thrill of violence. His cold, ruthless eyes held a glimmer of madness that only fueled his sadistic nature. Raze drove the gang into increasingly brutal acts, urging them deeper into darkness with every violent crime they committed. Then there was Ethan, the reluctant member. Though not as violent as the others, Ethan found himself tangled in a world of crime he could never escape. He had joined the gang out of desperation, wanting to belong, but his conscience weighed heavy on him. He wasn't a killer like Raze, but his fear of leaving the gang trapped him in their web. He was unlucky enough to be part of a gang that didn't care for remorse. Marcus, a follower at heart, was next in line. Marcus wasn't born to be a killer. He had always been more of a follower than a leader, dragged into the gang's web by fear and manipulation. Despite his hesitation, Marcus did what he was told, always under the shadow of Raze's cruel influence. Leo, quieter and more sensitive, had never wanted to be part of the violence. But like the others, he fell victim to the gang's pressure, scared to walk away. He wasn't as bloodthirsty as the rest, but that didn't save him from the consequences of his actions. Jake, the youngest member, was eager to prove himself. Though still green, he quickly learned what it meant to be part of the Bloodline, an ever-growing thirst for power, no matter the cost. Jake was terrified of what the gang had become, but he was too weak to break free. One night, while stalking the city's darker streets, the Bloodline crossed paths with a girl. She was wild, rebellious, and drawn to the danger the gang exuded. She introduced herself as Amelia, and although the gang had no idea who she truly was, they saw her as an easy target for their twisted desires. Amelia had always been attracted to bad boys, the kind that lived on the edge and flirted with danger. She found excitement in chaos and made reckless decisions because she enjoyed the thrill of living dangerously. When the gang approached her, she didn't hesitate. To her, this was just another adventure. But she didn't realize how deadly this night would become. In an act of violence, they raped and murdered Amelia. They left her lifeless body in an alley, thinking nothing of it. The boys moved on, thinking they had just claimed another victim, unaware that they had just killed the mayor's daughter. The next morning, the city was rocked with the devastating news. Amelia had been found dead. What the gang didn't know was that Amelia was no ordinary girl. She was the daughter of Mayor Thomas Hale, one of the most powerful men in the city. As soon as the police found out who she was, the entire city went into an uproar. The mayor promised to stop at nothing to bring the person, or people, responsible to justice. The gang, realizing their mistake, panicked. They knew they couldn't stay in the city. The police were already closing in, and the mayor's influence made escape nearly impossible. They had no choice but to flee. They needed to vanish, and fast. In their desperation, the gang heard rumors of a remote village called Doomhaven, deep in the mountains. This village had long been whispered about in eerie tales, said to be inhabited by souls who had committed horrific crimes in their past lives. These souls had been cursed, unable to pass on to the afterlife, forever trapped in the village as punishment for their wickedness. With no better options, the Bloodline made their way to Doomhaven, hoping for sanctuary. The village was eerie and quiet, shrouded in an unnatural fog. The residents, pale, hollow-eyed figures, welcomed them with open arms, offering food, shelter, and comfort. The gang, exhausted and terrified, gratefully accepted. For the first time in months, they felt at ease. The villagers treated them like honored guests, going out of their way to ensure their needs were met. But there was something unsettling about it all. The villagers never seemed to age, their smiles too perfect, their movements too synchronized. It felt wrong. Yet, In their desperation to escape the wrath of the police, the gang brushed off their growing unease. As the days passed, Ethan grew increasingly paranoid. He noticed things that others didn't. The eerie silence that hung over the village, the whispers that seemed to follow him in the night, the coldness that never seemed to go away. The villagers were strange, their eyes unnervingly calm, and the longer the bloodline stayed, the more Ethan felt they were walking straight into a trap. But Raze and the others were blind to the danger. Raze, ever the fearless leader, laughed off Ethan's concerns. To him, the village seemed like the perfect hideaway. No one would find them here. They could live out their lives in peace, until it all fell apart. It was Marcus who disappeared first. One evening, he ventured out to explore the village, but when he didn't return, the gang began to worry. The villagers offered no explanation for his absence, only an unsettling silence. Ethan was sure something had happened, but no one believed him. As the days wore on one by one, the gang began to vanish. Jake was taken next. He was found in the woods, but when they tried to find him, it was as though he had simply evaporated into thin air. The villagers claimed no knowledge of what had happened, but the gang was starting to realize the horrific truth. The villagers were not just residents, they were the dead. The souls of the wicked who had been trapped in the village for eternity, waiting for others like the Bloodline to come. The moment the gang arrived, they had sealed their fate. The villagers were not offering hospitality, they were luring them in, trapping them in a twisted game of retribution. Raze, the fearless leader, was the next to fall. His defiance and arrogance only made it easier for the spirits to take him. He tried to fight back, but the villagers closed in, and his screams were swallowed by the night. Leo and Ethan were left. Leo, once the most reluctant, fought with all his might. But no matter where they ran, they could never escape. The village twisted around them, the paths leading them back to the heart of Doomhaven. In the end, Ethan, the one who had always felt the weight of their sins, was the last to fall. The villagers closed in, their hollow eyes locked on him. He realized too late that there was no escaping the consequences of his actions. There was no forgiveness in Doomhaven, only punishment. The Bloodline, once a group of feared criminals, were now lost forever. Their names would be forgotten, their bodies claimed by the village of the damned. The village of Doomhaven remains hidden to this day, a place where the wicked are punished for their sins. The spirits of the lost, the souls who were denied the afterlife, continue to wait for their next victim, those who think they can escape their past. And the story of the Bloodline serves as a warning. No one escapes the consequences of their actions, not in this life, and certainly not in the next. The Bloodline's legacy lives on in the whispers of the villagers and the dark corners of Doomhaven, where souls like theirs are trapped forever. If you ever find yourself near the mountains and you hear whispers on the wind, remember, some places are better left undisturbed. For more of our stories, please subscribe, like, and share.